John Reynolds had spent most of his adult life navigating the vast, unpredictable seas as a naval officer. When he retired, he longed for a quiet place to call home, a spot where he could finally slow down and enjoy the calm. After months of searching, John found it. A charming waterfront neighborhood nestled along a gentle bay, dotted with friendly houses, blooming gardens, and the subtle sounds of waves kissing the shore. He bought a cozy home with a wide driveway and a small dock, just steps away from the water. But it wasn't just the house that made John feel at home. It was his naval patrol boat, a vessel he had cared for since his service days. The boat was more than a hobby. It was a living memory of his years serving the country, a symbol of discipline, resilience, and adventure. John took great pride in keeping the boat polished and ready for the occasional cruise. It sat proudly on a trailer beside his driveway, gleaming under the sun like a badge of honor. To him, it was part of the landscape, a fitting tribute to his past and a unique feature of his new home. Most neighbors admired the boat. Some paused on their evening walks to ask John about its history, eager to hear tales of life at sea. Others admired the craftsmanship, impressed by the way the wooden hull gleamed in the afternoon light. A few even shared stories of their own adventures, sparking warm conversations that slowly knitted John into the fabric of the neighbor. But not everyone shared this enthusiasm. Karen Mitchell, the neighborhood association president, was known for her attention to detail and her dedication to keeping the neighborhood orderly. She took her role seriously, often reminding neighbors about the importance of maintaining the neighborhood's appearance and shared values. She was polite but firm, a woman who believed rules help create harmony. One sunny morning, just 2 weeks after John moved in, Karen stopped by his house. Her expression was calm but serious as she introduced herself. "Welcome to the neighborhood, John," she began, extending a hand. "It's a lovely place to live." John shook her hand, smiling politely. "Thank you, Karen. I'm really glad to be here." Karen nodded, her eyes drifting toward the patrol boat. "I couldn't help but notice your boat parked here. It's certainly unique." John glanced over proudly. "Yes, it's a naval patrol boat I've had since my time in the service. It means a lot to me." Karen's smile tightened just slightly. "I understand that, and I respect your service. However, as the association president, I have to mention that we have guidelines about how things look around the neighborhood. Some neighbors have expressed concerns about large vehicles or boats being visible." John raised an eyebrow, curious. "I wasn't aware of any restrictions about boats, especially on private property," Karen explained. "Our guidelines emphasize keeping the neighborhood neat and consistent. While boats are allowed at the marina or on the water, having one parked on the driveway for extended periods can sometimes be seen as distracting or out of place." John listened carefully, trying to keep his tone friendly. "I understand the importance of neighborhood harmony, Karen, but this boat is part of my life. It's not just a vehicle, it's a symbol of many years of service and dedication." Karen nodded again, though her posture suggested she was prepared to stand firm. "I'm sure it is, John, but I do have to consider everyone's comfort. Perhaps we can find a way to address this together." John appreciated the civility, but sensed this conversation was only the beginning. He had hoped to settle in peacefully, but it was clear the patrol boat would spark more discussion than he anticipated. That evening, John sat on his porch, watching the sun set over the water. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant call of seagulls and the gentle lapping of waves. His boat rested beside his home, steadfast reminder of who he was and where he had been. He knew this was his new chapter, and he intended to stand by what mattered to him. But he also hoped he could find common ground, keeping peace in his new neighborhood without losing the spirit that made his house a home. In the days following her initial visit, Karen Mitchell found herself thinking often about the patrol boat parked in John Reynolds' driveway. As the neighborhood association president, she took pride in upholding the neighborhood standards. For her, maintaining a consistent look was a way to protect property values and preserve the quiet charm that attracted so many families to the waterfront community. But the boat stood out large, polished and unlike anything most residents had seen before. Karen had heard murmurs from a few neighbors, felt the boat was unusual for a residential driveway and might distract from the neighborhood's overall appearance. Determined to act thoughtfully, Karen sent John a formal letter. It was courteous, but clear. The neighborhood's guidelines encouraged boats to be stored at the marina or in less visible areas. The letter asked John to consider relocating the patrol boat or keeping it covered to blend better with the surroundings. John received the letter on a sunny afternoon as he worked on minor maintenance for his boat. He read it carefully, feeling a mixture of frustration and resolve. The boat was more than a possession, it was a connection to his past. It's a source of pride and comfort in this new chapter. The following morning, John took the initiative to visit Karen at her home. He wanted to talk directly, hoping to find common ground. Karen greeted him with a polite nod, her demeanor as firm as ever. "Karen," John began, "I received your letter. I understand the neighborhood's guidelines, but this boat means a lot to me. It represents my years in service and the discipline I carry with me. I keep it well maintained and respectful of the neighborhood." Karen listened thoughtfully. "I appreciate what the boat means to you, John, and I respect your service. But my role requires me to think about everyone's interests. Some neighbors worried that the boat's visibility could affect the neighborhoods. Look," John nodded, "I see that. But it's parked neatly on my property, not blocking anything or causing harm. I believe it adds character, not detracts." Karen's expression softened slightly. "Character is important, but so is consistency. Our guidelines help create a unified feel." The conversation was polite but pointed. Neither wanted to escalate matters, but neither was ready to give ground. They agreed to keep communication open, with Karen promising to relay John's perspective at the next association meeting. Meanwhile, word of the patrol boat spread quietly through the neighborhood. Some neighbors admired John's dedication and the boat's unique presence. Others whispered concerns about neighborhood rules and appearances. At the next association meeting, Karen brought up the issue. She presented the guidelines and shared the letters sent. Some board members sided with Karen, emphasizing the importance of uniformity. Others felt the boat was a special case, deserving consideration. John attended the meeting, listening carefully as neighbors spoke. A few applauded his commitment to the boat and welcomed him warmly. Others urged a cautious approach, worried about setting precedents. Despite the mixed opinions, the board voted to uphold the request. John should find a way to minimize the boat's visibility within 30 days. The decision was not unanimous, but it was clear. John left the meeting feeling disappointed but determined. He didn't want conflict, but he also wouldn't easily part with something so meaningful. That night, John walked along the water's edge, reflecting on the challenges ahead. He thought of his years at sea, the discipline and patience it had taken. This was a different kind of battle, quieter, but no less important. He knew he needed to find a way forward to respect his neighbors, while holding on to what made his new house a home. As he looked back at his patrol boat resting under the moonlight, John silently promised to stand firm with respect and grace, ready for whatever came next. John Reynolds knew the path ahead would require more than just quiet determination. The neighborhood association's decision weighed heavily on him, but he refused to give up on the patrol boat he treasured. It was a symbol of his service, his discipline, and the memories he carried with him. Finding a way to keep the boat while respecting the neighborhood's values became his mission. The next morning, John reached out to a trusted legal advisor, hoping to understand the neighborhood's guidelines more clearly. Sitting in his modest home office, he pored over the association's covenants and bylaws. Some sections were straightforward while others were vague, open to interpretation. His lawyer pointed out that, while the association could set reasonable standards about appearances, they had to apply them fairly and not impose undue restrictions. There was room for negotiation and clarity, a fact that gave John cautious hope. With renewed confidence, John decided to talk directly with several neighbors. He believed that personal conversations could bridge the gap better than formal letters or meetings. Over the next week, he walked the streets, stopping to greet people and share his story. Many neighbors listened with genuine interest as John spoke about his naval career and the special meaning of the patrol boat. Some smiled warmly, admiring the pride he took in maintaining it. A few neighbors shared their own stories about family, service, or their reasons for choosing the waterfront life. One afternoon, John met Maria and Tom, a retired couple who had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. They understood both sides of the issue. "We appreciate what the boat represents to you, John," Maria said kindly. "But we also value the peaceful, orderly feel of the neighborhood. Maybe there's a way to find common ground." Tom nodded. "Sometimes guidelines can be a bit rigid, but if we work together, perhaps we can find solutions that honor both tradition and individuality." Encouraged by their support, John began compiling ideas for how the patrol boat might better blend with the neighborhood's aesthetic without losing its identity. Suggestions ranged from installing tasteful covers to landscaping that softened the view to limited display times during special events. John's willingness to listen and adapt did not go unnoticed. Several neighbors who had initially been unsure began to voice quiet support. Some even joined him in discussions about updating the neighborhood guidelines to be clearer and more flexible. Back at the neighborhood association, Karen prepared for the next meeting with the board. She had noticed the growing conversations and support around John's situation. Although firm in her role, she appreciated the respectful dialogue unfolding. At the meeting, Karen shared John's efforts to engage neighbors and his ideas for compromise. The board members listened carefully. Few expressed surprise at the level of community involvement John had inspired. The discussion turned from enforcement to collaboration. The board agreed to review the guidelines and seek legal advice to ensure clarity and fairness. They planned to host an open forum where residents could share their thoughts and help shape the neighborhood's future. John felt a flicker of optimism. The tone was shifting from confrontation to cooperation. He hoped that with understanding and patience, the patrol boat could become part of the neighborhood's unique story rather than a point of division. Outside the meeting room, Karen approached John. "I appreciate your approach, John," she said sincerely. "You've made it clear you want to be part of this neighborhood. Let's work together to find a way that respects everyone." John smiled. "Thank you, Karen. I believe we can." As the sun set over the waterfront, John looked at his patrol boat gleaming softly in the fading light. It was still a challenge ahead, but now he wasn't facing it alone. The journey was far from over, but the path forward was clearer, built on understanding, respect, and a shared desire to make the neighborhood a home for everyone, despite the hopeful conversations and tentative plans for collaboration. Tensions in the neighborhood quietly escalated over the following weeks. What began as a disagreement about a boat soon turned into a symbol of differing views on identity, tradition, and change within the waterfront community. John Reynolds remained committed to keeping his naval patrol boat on his property. He also understood the concerns that some neighbors and the association had expressed. His efforts to soften the boat's appearance, adding a tasteful cover and planting shrubs nearby, had been well-intentioned, yet the calls for conformity continued. Karen Mitchell, steadfast in her role as Neighborhood Association president, found herself caught between her dedication to upholding the neighborhood's guidelines and the growing support John was receiving. She felt the weight of responsibility keenly, knowing that maintaining harmony sometimes meant making difficult choices. Karen sent a formal notice to John, reminding him of the upcoming deadline to fully comply with the association's recommendations. The letter urged John to remove the boat from visible view or face escalating consequences, including increased fees and potential legal action. Though professionally worded, the tone was firm, reflecting Karen's determination to enforce the rules. John received the letter with a sense of frustration, but remained calm. He had hoped that his compromises would satisfy the association. But it was clear the situation had grown more complicated. Still, he was determined not to let the patrol boat become a source of division. At a neighborhood meeting called to address the issue, emotions ran high. Supporters of John spoke about the importance of honoring individual histories and the unique character of the neighborhood. They emphasized respect, fairness, and the need to balance tradition with personal expression. Others expressed concerns about maintaining the neighborhood's appearance and preserving the standards that had attracted residents in the first place. They worried that allowing exceptions could lead to an erosion of the shared vision. The board members listened, their faces a mix of concern and contemplation. The conversation was passionate but respectful, underscoring how deeply the issue had touched many. John spoke from the heart, recounting his years of service and explaining what the patrol boat meant to him. "This boat is part of my story," he said. "It's a symbol of commitment, discipline, and dedication. I want to be a good neighbor, but I also want to keep a piece of my past alive." Karen responded thoughtfully, acknowledging the complexity of this situation. "I appreciate your perspective, John. This neighborhood means a lot to all of us. My job is to protect that, even when it's difficult." Despite the heartfelt exchanges, the association maintained its stance. John was asked to find a solution within the next 2 weeks or face additional steps. Meanwhile, whispers of the dispute traveled beyond the neighborhood. Local media outlets caught wind of the story. A retired naval officer facing off against the neighborhood's leadership over a cherished boat. The tale of pride, perseverance, and personal meaning struck a chord with many. As news spread, support for John grew. Former military members, legal advocates, and residents from neighboring areas expressed admiration for his stand. Letters of encouragement poured in, urging him to keep fighting with dignity. Back home, John reflected on the mounting pressures. The patrol boat, once a symbol of peace and memory, now represented a crossroads. He felt the weight of standing firm, but also the desire to resolve the conflict without fracturing the neighborhood. Karen, too, grappled with her role. She recognized the importance of fairness and the impact her decisions had on the people around her. Though committed to the guidelines, she wondered if there was a path to bridge the gap. As the deadline loomed, both John and Karen prepared for what felt like an inevitable turning point. The neighborhood watched closely, caught between admiration, concern, and the hope for a resolution that honored all voices. Underneath it all was a deeper story about belonging, respect, and the balance between individual identity and shared values. A story that was far from over. As the conflict between John Reynolds and the neighborhood association continued, the story began to reach beyond the quiet streets of the waterfront community. What started as a personal disagreement over a naval patrol boat quickly captured the attention of local media and sparked conversations about fairness, respect, and individual rights. It was a sunny afternoon when Emily Garcia, a reporter for the local newspaper, arrived at John's doorstep. She had heard about the dispute and wanted to hear John's side of the story firsthand. John welcomed her warmly, sharing the history behind his patrol boat and explaining what it meant to him. Emily listened intently as John spoke about his years in the Navy, the discipline and pride that had shaped his life, and the significance of the boat as a symbol of his journey. She noted the care and attention John put into maintaining the vessel and how he had tried to find a middle ground with the neighborhood association. Her article, published the next morning, painted a thoughtful and respectful picture of John's experience. It highlighted the tensions between personal expression and neighborhood standards, but focused on the human story beneath it all. A man striving to honor his past while fitting into a new community. The article struck a chord with readers. Letters poured into the newspaper, many expressing support for John's position. Former military personnel and veterans groups reached out, applauding his determination and respect for the neighborhood. Others emphasized the importance of understanding and adapting rules to accommodate unique situations. At the same time, some residents of the waterfront neighborhood expressed mixed feelings. They valued the neighborhood's order and worried that exceptions might lead to more conflicts in the future. Yet, even among these voices, there was a growing recognition that the situation deserved a careful, compassionate approach. The increased attention prompted the neighborhood association to reconsider its strategy. Karen Mitchell found herself facing questions not only from neighbors but also from local leaders and advocacy groups. The weight of the situation became clearer, and the importance of finding a fair, respectful resolution grew stronger. Karen reached out to John, suggesting they meet to discuss the way forward. They agreed to sit down at a local cafe, away from the formalities of meetings and letters. Over coffee, the conversation was candid and sincere. "I didn't expect the story to spread like this," John admitted. "It's been overwhelming, but also encouraging to see so many people support finding a respectful solution." Karen nodded. "It's been a learning experience for me as well. My intention was to uphold the neighborhood's values, but I realize now there's more nuance to consider. I want to find a way we can both feel good about." They discussed possibilities, updating the neighborhood guidelines to allow for special cases, creating clearer communication channels for residents to share their concerns, and even organizing community events that celebrated the neighborhood's diversity, inspired by the positive tone of their meeting. John and Karen agreed to propose a special forum for all residents. The goal was to foster open dialogue, share stories, and explore how the neighborhood could evolve while respecting its roots. As plans for the forum took shape, John's patrol boat became a symbol not of conflict, but of conversation, a reminder that personal stories can open doors to understanding. The news coverage continued, this time focusing on the efforts to bridge divides and strengthen neighborhood ties. John's story encouraged others to speak up about their own experiences, fostering a spirit of empathy and collaboration back in the neighborhood. Preparations for the forum brought neighbors together. Invitations were sent, meeting spaces arranged, and a sense of anticipation grew. John looked at his patrol boat one evening, the setting sun casting a golden glow on its polished surface. It no longer felt like a point of contention, but a beacon of new beginnings. Whatever came next, John knew that respect, patience, and a willingness to listen would guide the way. The story was no longer just about a boat. It was about building connections and embracing the strength found in shared understanding. The anticipation in the waterfront neighborhood was palpable as the day of the community forum approached. Residents buzzed with curiosity, wondering how the ongoing disagreement over John Reynolds' naval patrol boat might finally find resolution. While many hoped for peaceful compromise, there remained an undercurrent of unease. The situation had grown far more complex than anyone initially expected. John Reynolds had spent the past weeks preparing for the forum, eager to share his story and hear from neighbors. However, despite the good intentions expressed by Karen Mitchell and others on the association board, the underlying issue of the boat's presence on private property remained unsettled. The association's insistence on guidelines and visual consistency still weighed heavily, and legal counsel had been consulted on both sides as a last step before the forum. John's attorney advised him to document everything carefully, explaining that should the dispute escalate further, a court's decision might be necessary to protect his rights and clarify neighborhood boundaries. The day before the forum, John received a formal notice from the association. It stated that, since the earlier deadline had passed without full compliance, the association was initiating legal action to enforce the guidelines. This letter was firm but professional, outlining potential consequences including fines and forced removal. John felt a mixture of disappointment and resolve. He wished for a peaceful, neighborly solution, but he was prepared to stand up for what he believed was fair and just. The forum opened with a gathering of residents, board members, and legal advisors. Emotions were high, but civility prevailed. John shared his naval background and the significance of the patrol boat. Many residents spoke in support, praising his dedication and the spirit of community he sought to foster. Karen spoke to, emphasizing her commitment to the neighborhood's well-being and the need to respect the association's guidelines. She expressed hope that the forum would inspire changes in policies to avoid future conflicts. Despite the goodwill in the room, it became clear that the legal question could not be avoided. The neighborhood's covenants had ambiguous language, leaving room for different interpretations. Neither side could claim absolute certainty without a formal ruling. Within days, the matter moved to the local courthouse. The judge, a seasoned professional familiar with community association disputes, reviewed the evidence, listened to arguments, and carefully considered the perspectives. John's attorney argued that the association's guidelines were being applied inconsistently and that the patrol boat did not pose a legitimate threat to the neighborhood's character. The boat was well maintained, parked safely on private property, and had significant personal value to John. The association's legal counsel emphasized the importance of upholding community standards and the association's right to enforce reasonable rules to protect property values and neighborhood harmony. After thorough deliberation, the judge issued a ruling that surprised many. The court found that while the association had the right to enforce guidelines, their handling of John's case lacked fairness and clear communication. The judge noted John's respectful attempts to cooperate and the absence of any harm caused by the boat's presence as a result. The court awarded John a significant judgment, including a $350,000 fine against the association's leadership for undue pressure and mishandling of the dispute. The ruling emphasized that associations must balance their responsibilities with fairness and respect for individual homeowners' rights. The decision sent ripples through the neighborhood. Some residents were relieved, others reflective, and many hopeful that this would mark a turning point toward more thoughtful governance. Karen Mitchell, facing the consequences of the court's decision, publicly acknowledged the outcome with grace. She expressed regret for the stress caused and committed to working with neighbors to rebuild trust and improve the association's policies. John, though relieved by the legal victory, remained focused on healing the neighborhood. He wanted the patrol boat to be a symbol not of conflict but of resilience, understanding, and community. The court's ruling sparked wider discussions in the neighborhood about fairness, communication, and the importance of balancing individual rights with shared values. It became clear that change was necessary, not just in policies but in the spirit with which neighbors approached one another. For John, the legal moment was decisive, but it was only one step on a longer journey. The true victory, he knew, lay in the opportunity to move forward together with respect, dignity, and a shared commitment to making their neighborhood a welcoming home for all. The courtroom battle had come to an unexpected and decisive end, but for John Reynolds and the waterfront neighborhood, the real work was just beginning. The $350,000 judgment against the association's leadership was a clear message. Fairness and respect must guide community decisions. Yet, beneath the headlines and legal outcomes lay the deeper challenge of healing and rebuilding relationships. John knew that the patrol boat, though at the center of the dispute, was not the real story. The heart of the matter was trust, between neighbors, between residents and leadership, and within the community itself. In the weeks following the court's ruling, John took the initiative to meet with Karen Mitchell privately. Despite their earlier differences, both approached the conversation with openness and a shared desire to move forward. "I want to thank you for how you handled everything after the ruling," John said sincerely. "I know it wasn't easy, but your willingness to listen and work together means a lot." Karen smiled, a mix of relief and hope in her eyes. "I've learned a great deal. Our community is stronger when we communicate openly and respect one another's stories." Together, they drafted a plan to restore harmony. They proposed a new neighborhood committee tasked with revising the guidelines, ensuring they were clear, fair, and flexible enough to accommodate special cases like John's boat. Importantly, the committee would include residents from all perspectives, fostering inclusive dialogue. The news spread quickly, sparking a renewed sense of unity. Many neighbors volunteered to join the committee, eager to contribute to a positive future. The patrol boat, once a point of contention, became a symbol of collaboration and growth. At the committee's first meeting, ideas flowed freely. Residents discussed ways to preserve the neighborhood's charm without stifling individuality. Suggestions included seasonal display allowances, landscaping guidelines, and clearer communication protocols. John shared his experiences, emphasizing the importance of empathy and patience. "We all want this neighborhood to thrive," he said. "That means valuing each other's histories and being willing to adapt." Karen acknowledged the importance of leadership that listens. "Guidelines are necessary," she said, "but they must serve the people, not the other way around." Outside the committee meetings, neighborhood life began to feel different. The patrol boat remained in John's driveway, its presence accepted and even celebrated. Some residents stopped by to admire its craftsmanship and hear John's stories. Of naval service, community events started to reflect the new spirit. A summer picnic brought neighbors together to share food, laughter, and stories. The boat was a star attraction, with children gathered around as John explained its features and history. Over time, the association's reputation improved. Kieran's leadership evolved, marked by transparency and inclusiveness. Trust slowly rebuilt, brick by brick. John's journey inspired others to speak up about their own concerns and dreams for the neighborhood. The dialogue that had seemed so fraught became a foundation for ongoing growth. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John stood beside his patrol boat, feeling a profound sense of peace. The conflict that once threatened division had given way to connection. He thought about the lessons learned about respect, resilience, and the power of listening. The patrol boat was more than a vessel. It was a bridge linking past and present, individual and community. In the end, the neighborhood was more than houses and guidelines. It was a living, evolving story shaped by the people who called it home. Months had passed since the court's ruling. The waterfront neighborhood was no longer the place of tension it had once been. The patrol boat, once a symbol of conflict, had transformed into a symbol of community, of resilience, understanding, and progress. John Reynolds looked out from his porch as the sun set, casting a warm glow over the calm waters. The boat gleamed softly in the fading light, peaceful and unassuming. For John, it represented much more than a vessel. It was a reminder of the journey he had taken from confrontation to connection. The neighborhood association had changed, too. Under Karen Mitchell's leadership, the group embraced a new spirit of transparency and inclusiveness. Guidelines were updated thoughtfully with input from a diverse committee of residents. Ensuring clarity and fairness, at the heart of these changes was a simple principle. Every homeowner's story mattered. The community learned that rules were important. But so was empathy. John and Karen had grown into unexpected allies. Their partnership, once strained by disagreement, had evolved into mutual respect. Together, they had helped the neighborhood face its challenges and grow stronger. The committee's work continued, exploring ways to celebrate the neighborhood's unique character while maintaining a welcoming atmosphere. Events, workshops, and gatherings brought neighbors closer, fostering friendships and understanding. One memorable afternoon, the neighborhood hosted a Heritage Day, where residents shared stories of their lives and histories. John stood proudly by his patrol boat, sharing tales from his naval service and inviting neighbors to explore the vessel. Children's laughter filled the air as they climbed aboard. Wide-eyed and curious, parents thanked John for his openness and generosity. Noting how the boat had become a cherished part of the community's fabric, Karen watched from a distance, a smile on her face. She marveled at how far the neighborhood had come from uncertainty to unity. The patrol boat was no longer a point of contention, but a symbol of shared respect. It reminded everyone that understanding often required patience and a willingness to listen. John reflected on the lessons learned. Standing firm on what mattered to him had been important, but so had embracing dialogue and compromise. "The boat is part of who I am," John said quietly one evening, "but it's also part of all of us now. It brought us together in ways I never imagined." Neighbors often stopped by for a friendly chat, some sharing their own stories of service, family, or change. The community had become a place where differences were valued and voices heard as the seasons changed. John found new purpose. He volunteered to help newcomers feel welcome, offering tours of the neighborhood and sharing the story of their collective journey. Karen, too, took on new challenges, focusing on community building and listening initiatives. She believed that leadership was about connection, a lesson learned through experience together. They dreamed of a neighborhood that could face any future challenge with grace and unity. Looking toward the horizon, John felt hopeful. The patrol boat was more than a cherished possession. It was a testament to perseverance, respect, and the power of coming together. The neighborhood, once divided by a single vessel, had become a community united by its stories and shared dreams. And as the lights of the waterfront homes twinkled in the night, John knew this was only the beginning of a new, brighter chapter.